Thanks everyone, firstly for coming and sacrificing your lunchtime, but also for putting up with me dealing with the microphone. So just like to say a huge welcome to Cristina Jimenez, our Tropical Data Programme Manager, and Tom Millar, our Neglected Tropical Disease Operations Director. They're here to talk to you today about tropical data, the way that the programme operates, the work, the collaboration involved, and as well as some of the challenges they face. So thanks guys, over to you.
Okay, good afternoon everyone, and thanks again for coming. As Becky just introduced, there's myself and Cristina here. Cristina does all the hard work. I just get to stand up at these presentations now and again and pretend I've got something to do with it all. But we're going to try and tell you about a fantastic programme we've got, Tropical Data. It must work in the most countries more countries than any other Sightsavers programme. It's, I think, 42 countries it's worked in, and we've got 2 full-time people working on it, Cristina and Dr. Mikel Dejeuner in Ethiopia. We've got lots of other people who work part-time who get drawn in to help, so we get technical experts. And as you'll find out throughout the presentation, it's not just about Sightsavers. It's a weird and wonderful concoction, Tropical Data. It doesn't have a contract. There is no overarching donor or funder, so there is no contract. There are organisations that have come together who think this is really important to help deliver this, and that's what they do. They come together. We beg, steal and borrow money from all the other contracts that we do have. So we have USAID as a funder through RTI, we have DFID as a funder through Ascend, we have our other Bill and Melinda Gates and others involved in through the Accelerate programme. But basically, we steal as much money as we can from other programmes, put it all in just to keep this all functioning. And we think we're responding to a need that's out there for trachoma and elimination, but also a need from all the country programmes. And hopefully at the end of the day, you'll find it interesting, you'll find it exciting, and you'll want to know more about it. So set the kind of bar high. I want to talk about is Tropical Data is about surveys. So don't fall asleep. Surveys are fascinating and hugely important to our world. In here, we've got many types of surveys. But the surveys we focus on are baseline surveys for trachoma. So we're trying to understand where the prevalence is and how prevalent it is. We then, once we've identified there is a need for interventions, the interventions will take place, and then periodically we'll check in, we'll have an impact survey. So we'll go in again and have a look and see, have the interventions had the impact that we hoped they would? If they did, great. We then move on to a surveillance survey 2 years later, and that will determine if we think we've achieved the WHO thresholds for elimination for the disease. If we fail any of these surveys, which happens all the time, we go back again. We go back again, we conduct the interventions, then we check again, then we move forward. So for any unit or district, it will go through at least 3 surveys: a baseline, an impact, and a surveillance survey. There are many other types of surveys as well that we do as well and hope to do, and we'll touch on them later. But this is about surveys and how fascinating they are, believe it or not. The problem, for those of us that were around 7 years ago in 2012, trachoma had the target of eliminating the disease as a public health problem by 2020. But some of the interventions lasted 5 years before you could even have an impact assessment or an impact survey. So at that point in time, the trachoma community knew that if it didn't get its act together and find out where trachoma was in the world, how could you eliminate it if you didn't even know where it is and how prevalent it is? So the trachoma community came together, kind of led by Sightsavers, made a big plea to DFID to say, look, we need help, we need money. we need something to kind of fast track this whole process on trachoma. What that actually meant was, by 2012, less than half the suspected districts in the world had been mapped. So less than half of them had been mapped. And that had taken, although this is 12 years, it was like 20 to 30 years to get to that point. So the challenge now was, in 3 years, in the next 3 years from 2012, could we map the rest of the world? So it was an easy, it was like one of these easy challenges. And the reason we had to work with DFID is because we didn't have a plan for it. All we had was a vision, a target. We didn't know how we were going to get there. We knew everybody in the world had to, all the NGOs in the world had to collaborate to make it happen, but we didn't have a plan. So it wasn't like, here's our proposal, DFID. So the proposal to DFID said, we'll map 1,238 districts in 34 countries in 3 years. Trust us, move on. And they did, and they did. And Ian Jones, I don't know if Ian's here, Ian Jones, who works upstairs, Lena, he was key when he was at DFID in unlocking this and making all this happen. Come on, speak to me. Once we'd said, trust us, we can do it, we then had to obviously worry about how we could do it. And these were the things that really occupied our mind. How do you scale up? How are we going to scale up? Because most of the programs have been relatively small. You know, we have to standardise. If we're going to do all this in 3 years, we can't do it differently in every country. We've got to do it the same. We've got to do the same everywhere else. Once the data comes in, how the hell are we going to manage all the data? Just how are we going to do it? Quality. How do we ensure that getting after things in 3 years, huge volume, how do we make sure that we just don't focus on the number of surveys and the number of people examined, and that we actually make sure that the quality is good, so the data is good? And then how do we get all the resources, the capacity, be it NGOs, be it countries, because they're not ready there, they're not ready for the scale up. So that's what we thought about. And through the rest of, I'm not going to just now, but through the rest of the presentation, you'll see examples of how we addressed all these individual challenges. But that was where our mind was. Coming together, we said DFID gave us the money, but it didn't just happen magically. We Sightsavers have been working with others for about 18 months beforehand, trying to get a collaboration together, trying to get a point that when money comes, NGOs they're not like vultures all pecking at it and trying to grab what was best for them. It was like, can we get the money to where the need is greatest, regardless of who's working there? And that was a new concept. It was a new concept, and Sightsavers were chosen to lead that kind of concept, and we did. And DFID gave us £10.6 million and said, go on, work with everybody else and make it happen. So the grant agreement, I think, was like 4 pages. So just go and do it. So Sightsavers worked hard, but I think in the end it was 60 partners and organisations. But in initial it was probably 20, 25 partners, organisations. Many meetings involving everybody about how do we go forward. We chose Dr. Antti Solon to lead on the technical side because he was renowned as a global expert. So he was based in the London school. So we chose him to do it, and off we went. But the first 18 months was about collaboration, trying to find out who worked where, how would you divide up work, all the stuff, all the political stuff that kind of kept on, the political challenges just kept on going, but we kind of got agreement, we got handshakes with everybody before the money came. That then led to the Global Trachoma Mapping Project. And if we just cut to the chase and all this, it did 1,500 districts, 29 countries, 2.6 million. What you'll find as we go on, tropical data followed GTMP, but you'll find out tropical data is even bigger. It is even bigger and bolder than this. What we didn't realise is we actually thought, even though we were more than 50% of the world to map, what we didn't realise was there was many other countries which didn't even have trachoma suspected. And as we went through the process, more and more countries came on board as having suspected trachoma. So when we thought we'd 1,500, it ended up at 1,900. The most fascinating aspect of all this, for me, is the USAID kind of joining. So even though the whole process that you'll hear more about was all set up through the DFID program, USAID agreed that this was high quality data collection, and that they wanted their programs to embrace it as well. So all the field work happened in the USAID programs, happened through GTMP training. USAID funded the field work, but all the data and all the management of the surveys all came through GTMP, Sightsavers and its partners. So effectively, I think 90% of all the surveys that were ever done in trachoma were done using GTMP globally. And we'll come to what global means. It is global. It is global. Just kind of scale thing. We talked about 60 partners, 550 teams, trained teams. Teams are of 4 people. So we've got a clinical grader that does the examination, the eye examination. We've got a recorder that collects the data. We also got a driver, and then somebody from the community to do the introductions. We collected, not only did we collect trachoma data, we also collect water and sanitation data as well from all the households. So survey took about 15 minutes when it was moving at the household, and that was the start we gave at the time. That was away in 2015. On average, one person examined every 40 seconds during the 3-year project. I think tropical data is half of that now. It's like about every 20 seconds somebody's examined. The whole point in all doing this, of course, is just to find out where trachoma is, who needs treatment, who doesn't. And that was some of the stats we used again, that identified 100 million people that required treatments. And for the trachoma program, rather controversially, that compared to the other NTDs, trachoma is a bit of a leader in what its processes are. And it's all underpinned by the surveys, because the surveys give us wash data, surveys give us prevalence data, but it means there is no question mark about, is this the right thing to intervene in a country? And I'll give an example. In a couple of weeks, I'm off as an observer to the Trachoma Technical Expert Committee in Pfizer's headquarters in New York. Every 6 months, there's a meeting where trachoma experts sit down and review applications for drugs from all the country. Applications, so for Zithromax, and then they go through this gateway, the Trachoma Expert Committee. Once they say yes, then the ITI will deliver the drugs, and Pfizer will donate the drugs to the programs. All fantastic stuff. If I go back 5 years ago, all these meetings, they're a 3-day meeting, and everybody fight down and say, I don't believe any of that stuff. I don't believe that the prevalence of that district is that high or it's low, because in their experience in working there, they'd either seen lots of trachoma or they hadn't. And the whole meeting was spent trying to refine the quality of the data so people could make decisions. Now it's just given. It's given that the quality of data, the only thing it's asked is does it come through tropical data, or it was GTMP, and then everybody is just immediately believed. And then the 3 days are spent on focusing on how can we help the countries with problems that they have or particular technical issues. It's just changed the whole dynamic. So the advantage trachoma has is it just has data. Beginning of January every year, it can tell you exactly where every country is with its prevalence. Now, some of the countries can't tell you that. And what we've done is, working with WHO, we now present some of that data back to them, so when they make donations for drugs, they don't have to fill in forms. Everything's pre-populated. The countries have given us the data, so we just give them back in a format that everybody can understand, and then they submit it to WHO. So it's just a huge moving. And we know with some of the other diseases, it can take 9 months, maybe a year to get the data. But in January, we know exactly where all the programs are regarding MDA, which is just like, that'd be brilliant for the private sector, never mind for our sector, when we've got so many kind of links of the chain to go through, from, you know, from the districts to the states to the countries to WHO, and then all that data is supposed to be right as well. So what next? Tropical data. GTMB finished in 2015, 2016.
First survey finished, or the last survey finished in January 2016.
Yeah. And the thing I like about the last surveys is the last training was trying to train trainers from Pakistan, clinical graders Pakistan. Couldn't get into Pakistan because it's just insecure. So we flew the graders from Pakistan to northern Nigeria because it's safer. And there was a week's training in Pakistan for, it was a huge number, 40 people or something, 40 graders. And all the trainers were from the Middle East, they were from Ethiopia, Nigeria, I think, and Tanzania. You know, not a white face in all the training. And for me, that just told you where GTMB got it. It had a peer network, everybody was driving forward, everybody understood it, and all we needed to do was keep oiling the wheels a bit and make sure that people got to the right places. So that was it. After tropical data, we did a few sessions at WHO meetings. We did a few meetings with the countries, and there was a huge desire to keep GTMP going, which we couldn't do because we no money. So we knew we couldn't keep GTMP going and fund all the field work. So what we thought, what about if we separate the field work from the service that keeps everything going? So that's what we thought, because we thought maybe we can find funders to fund the service, but not all the field work, because the field work is hundreds of millions of dollars, if you like. So that's what we did. We created a system called Tropical Data. Christina's going to take us through it in more detail. But the idea was keep the service going so countries could just plug in and NGOs could just plug in. So we'd help them with everything from planning. We've got people that we can send in to help them. There's people to send in, do the training. Everything we've done on GTMP, apart from we can't pay for the survey field work. And that was that was 2016, and it's still going now in 2019. So Cristina, do you want to take us through tropical data?
So as Tom said, we kind of wanted to build on what was already there with GTMP, this global network of trainers and all the other things in place. And tropical data was born. It's a bit of a generic slide. It's what all the countries get. So as we've kind of already said, we're here to help countries collect high quality standardised data to help them towards elimination. And instead of just baseline, we're now supporting impact and surveillance surveys, which follow the exact same methodology, so they're all directly comparable. And we also support what are called TT-only surveys, which are used in very specific circumstances. And the biggest thing, and it was the same with GTMP, all data owned by the respective health ministries. So even Tom and I, as part of the tropical data team, we cannot see any of that data. Only the data managers who sit at ITI have access to that data in their roles, supporting the countries with the data cleaning process. This is the tropical data team. So it's made up of, the endemic countries, of course, that we work with, their NGO partners, who often fund the field work. The London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine provide the scientific oversight. ITI, the International Trachoma Initiative, who are based in Atlanta in the States. They are the data management team. There's two of them that sit there. There's also RTI International, who help with some of the technology development and support the international training of trainer sessions that we deliver every year. And then Sightsavers, we do a lot of the sort of project management, we support the national trainings, and we also give epidemiological support. And then you have WHO, who are involved in terms of setting the standards. We follow all the approved methodologies and obviously protecting the country interests there. And as mentioned, kind of the main difference is that Tropical Data isn't providing funding for the field work, but we do support the end-to-end process. So sorry, you won't be able to see this very well, but we'll talk through it. So a country will get in touch. They'll say, we want to do impact surveys in this particular region. We ask for at least 6 weeks notice. That rarely happens. It's great. So the first thing we do is establish the methodology and help them with their protocol. They often need to submit their protocol for ethics in country, and the protocol is important just to make sure they're following the methodology as they should. And we have a team who help them with drafting that, and it gets signed off by our chief scientist as well as the trachoma representative at WHO. We also help with the project planning. So how many people do they want to train? Where are they going to hold the training? Do they have enough trainers in country, or are we going to have to send trainers in? And we will fund trainers if they need to be sent in. We then move on to the field work. So at that point, it's usually the data team collaborating with the supervisors and the teams in the field, helping to clean the data coming in. They're looking for any issues in the data, any problems. For example, trichiasis is very rare in children. So if the data team see trichiasis marked as present in someone who's 5 years old, they'll flag that and say, was that definitely correct? So there's certain checks that they're doing at every stage. And with the data cleaning, that's all signed off by the ministry, and it's all recorded on the system. And then at the end, we have the provision of the results, and it all comes in a standardised format that the countries can then do what they need to do with. Next, we have, hopefully it will work, a really short video from our colleague in Uganda who works for the Ministry of Health, Gilbert. He's also one of our master recorder trainers, so he trains on the recording of the data on the phones. And this is his experience from his journey from Uganda using paper all the way to now.
Yes, the tropical data system is a standardized method of collecting information. So we are able to share this information because we know that our neighbors, Kenya and South Sudan, use the same methods to train and also to collect the data. So we are able to exchange information that has meaning, similar meaning both to the Kenyans and to us, and then we can track progress easily because we know that it is quality data and it is reliable. In Uganda, we have used 3 methods of data collection. We started with the paper-based forms, and these were difficult because you would have so many papers, and then you have to go out very far in hard-to-reach places on motorbikes, and they would get wet, they would get dusty, and these were even difficult to edit. So this evolved into what we called the GTMP, but the initial system that we used that was electronic, and we used this for some time. It was quite relief because you would take GPS, you would upload the forms at the end of each day, so the data was safer, it was easier to collect and more convenient, and it was standardized. So then we moved into a much better system, which we call the tropical data, whereby we can access this information anytime. We can give near real-time feedback to the teams the next day after a survey, and we are able to get this information when it is required by decision makers, whether they are planning people or politicians or just leadership within the NTD. So this has been great progress over the years, and we are looking forward to making it even bigger and better.
Just a sneak peek at our chat with Gilbert. Just to emphasise, I think Tom has a good story with. with Malawi. So previously, if they were using paper instead of phones, that could take months and months to collate all that data, process it up the chain, to where it could be, used for decision making. And I think as a record, we had about 24 hours in Malawi once.
It was less. We were at one of these technical expert meetings, and Malawi had completed its final survey in Malawi in the morning in Malawi, and while we were sitting at the meeting in the States, the results came up, and what that meant was they had finished the surveys, they'd signed it off, the data had been looked at, it had been analysed, cleaned, it had gone back to the countries electronically, they'd reviewed it, and electronically they'd signed off, and then that data was now available. A summary of that data was now publicly available on the Trachoma Atlas. So while we're at the meetings, it was the same day. When you take it used to take 6 months just to get the results. Never mind the level of quality it's on that, because if you find something 6 months later, it's difficult to then go back and find out who's doing it. And the key to this is that there's people on the end of the phone, there's people talking to the fields daily. So when issues come up, they're resolved while the teams are still in the field, and they're not being at home for 6 months or back at work for 6 months.
Yeah. It doesn't always happen in 24 hours, but that's on a good day. This is just a map showing GTMP and tropical data coverage. So in total, we've worked in 49 countries. Tropical data on its own is now at 42 countries. We're hoping to get to our 50th. It's not obviously a good thing, but it's also a milestone by the end of the year. But that's just an idea of where we've worked and where we've supported surveys. It's just some numbers. So GTMP, as we said, went for 3 years. We surveyed 905 EU. So an EU is an evaluation unit, which is pretty much equivalent to a district. It's an epidemiological measure, so it depends on the population. But for all intents and purposes, that's a district within a country. And it examined 2.6 million people. 3.5 years on, tropical data has now reached 1,641 EUs and examined over 5 million people. So in total, we're now at over 2,500 EUs, over nearly 8 million people examined since 2012, which, given what was going on before 2012, it's just an amazing achievement. Just a little closer look at some of the tropical data stats. So out of this, we've supported 1,641 surveys in 42 countries. That number is correct as of last week. We've confirmed that MDA is not needed in 255 EU, so those would have been baseline surveys. So we've shown no safe interventions are needed there. We've confirmed MDA can be stopped in 511 EUs, so those would have been impact surveys, and that have shown that they've now reached the threshold we want. And we've helped countries confirm they've reached the elimination threshold in 324 EUs, so those would have been the surveillance surveys. So just to summarise some of those things. So
and just the background, it takes one team a month to cover an EU. Now, the more teams you've got, of course, you can, with 2 teams, it's 2 weeks type thing. And in some countries, we've had 30 teams working all at once. So it really depends. But it's a big investment. It's not just, you turn up, you do a survey, you go back. So it's a month for one team. It's a month's work when we're talking about these 2,500 surveys.
Yeah. So some countries like Ethiopia, in the next year, they have about 120 surveys due, which is a huge amount of training and people that they're going to need on the ground. Somewhere like Yemen recently, they were doing surveys in 6 EUs at the time. So, every country we're working with at any one point can be at a very different stage in its journey. But they're all using the same standardized approaches. So the same methodologies, training, data management in all these countries. So we're just going to look a little bit more in detail about how we've scaled up and some of the different elements, important elements to think about. So as we mentioned, the use of smartphones to capture and send the data from the field was a massive step when it first started. Quite a scary thing for some countries. You know, can you trust it? There was a lot of suspicion at first, I think, when GTMP first came along, whereas now, you know, now countries want to use it for all other kind of surveys. Near real-time review and analyses of the data. So as we kind of showed with our very extreme Malawi example, it can be done very quickly, not normally quite as quick. The data is stored on a secure database, which is only accessible to the Ministry of Health in that country and any partners or any other individuals that they nominate. And there's that standard provision of results. So as Gilbert says in his interview there, kind of, you know, he can go and share that and compare really easily now with his neighbours if there's cross-border issues. And having these elements, so we're helping countries save money. They don't need to build their own data collection platforms. They're also saving resources in that they have very scarce resources. So, you know, with the work we're doing, they know exactly where they need to target the resources they do and where they need those interventions. So standardized methodologies and training. So everything is WHO approved. We have epidemiological support available to the countries, as I said, and there's that scientific oversight from the start to the end. So when the results are going through the cleaning and approval process, our chief scientist kind of is also checking just to make sure there's no questions there. And then, as we mentioned, we have a standardized training system with certified trainers, and all teams have to be certified. And we have a little bit more on training. So our training system allows for collaboration and sharing of experiences. It's really common to have, you know, we've got a training in Burundi in a few weeks' time, and we've got a trainer from Benin and one from Ivory Coast going to that training. So there's a lot of collaboration and sharing. Since 2012, we have trained over 300 people at our training of trainer workshops from over 45 countries. And at a national level, we've supported over 100 training workshops. And just as an idea in terms of like the quality assurance process, so for training graders, who are the ones who diagnose and examine the eyelid, our cascade system, so we have our reference graders who are like the gold standard, and there was 2 as of 2 months ago. There's now 5 of those of them globally. We then have a pool of master graders, and there's 16 of them. They can then train national level trainers, of which we're probably at about 100 now. And then obviously they're then training the team members, the graders. And we have a similar system for the recorders who are doing the data entry and asking the WASH questions. So at any point you can sort of, you know, you can see how they've been trained in the sequence there.
It's not just trained, isn't it, Cristina? They're all tested. And to become a master grader, you have to reach, you're compared to, you do a test along with the gold standard graders, and you have to, there's a limit or a threshold you have to get above to see if you can become a master grader. So of course the master graders are tested against the gold standard, the national level trainers are tested against the master graders, and then the graders are tested against the trainers. So in theory, at one time we only had one gold standard person And in theory, everybody who was out, any grader that was out in a team, we could tell his ability of where he was, because we could actually compare him to the gold standard type thing. So that's a key way that we maintain quality. So we know whatever country somebody's working on, whoever they are, they have been tested against a trainer who's been tested against a master grader who's been tested against the reference graders. And interestingly enough, not everybody passes. So the failure rate is somewhere between 25 to 33%. So even though people are coming, they can be an ophthalmic nurse, they work with eyes, if you like, between a quarter and a third don't pass. And are not allowed to take part in the program of the training.
And so we also work on making sure that trainers are recertified every couple of years. So in Tanzania this year, we had a refresher training, and some people did not walk away with the grading they came in at, which makes for some very tough conversations. But yeah, there is that very strict process in place. This is a time-lapse video from Tanzania. It was kind of in the Gilbert video, but we can have a quick look. So this is when they're doing the IGA, which is the Integrator Agreement Test for the graders. They go to the field and the trainer will examine 50 children, and the trainees will examine those same 50 children, and the score is worked out on the agreement they have with that grading. Gets very confusing. The kids have all got their numbers on, but then they start, giving them to someone else, and then you can't check who's who. But
in the training, there's a desk-based, or not a desk-based, a presentation slides. So they set a test in the classroom, and just about everybody passes the tests in the classroom, but with slides that are 10 foot by 4, up on the wall. Everybody seems to pass that. So therefore, when I talked about 25 to 33% fail, it's at this part of the test when they've got a wriggling child and they've got the light's not the same, and they've got to flip the eyelid and still keep the child, kind of thing. So this is where if people fail, they'll fail in the field. They won't fail in the classroom.
And then there are other things we do. We support countries with operational research, and if they have other needs, if there's questions they want to add to the standardised survey, we have a conversation about that. And if there's a need for it, we can add it to the survey. So we try and be as flexible as possible. And we also sometimes support with other diseases. So say unofficially in the past, with GTMP, for instance, we supported with trachoma and LF surveys, trachoma and schisto surveys. We've done that on occasions with tropical data. So if people want to do blood spot collection, we can build that in. We don't at the moment do the data analysis for that. But we are looking at ways. We're sort of speaking with the OEM project, Onco-Elimination Mapping Project, that Sightsavers also looks after, and working with partners such as ESPN, at how we can more fully support and help countries with other diseases in this sort of similar standardized way, because all the different diseases are at very different stages.
Okay. Thank you, Christine. This is just some quotes that we've got loads of quotes. The amount of organisations and people that have been involved in both of these programs. So we've got quotes, and this is just some of them. Dr. Tawfik, fantastic guy. Tropical Data is doing a lot of work, and it's very important to help Yemen eliminate trachoma. These were the guys where we got a call to say their teams had been kidnapped, by terrorists, and what should I do? By the time they got to respond, they negotiated and released them in Yemen. And then I remember asking Tawfik, I said, how do you work in Yemen? How do you work with all the conflict? He says, we just keep away from it. So they work in the rural areas and try to keep away from where all the conflict is. But yet again, inspiring gentleman doing some inspiring work in really difficult countries. Nicholas, we all know and love from Nigeria, and I think for Nigeria, it's been a step change. They're not the most, I can't say, one of their strengths is data management, and this has been testing them to the full. So the question for us now, how do we get all the data we've got now, how do we get this into the ministry systems, so it's there and it's institutionalised and it's not sitting with Sightsavers or sitting with the districts? How do we make this data flow? So that's part of our other programmes we've got, is how do we keep this information flowing through. Dr. Michael Dejanay, he's full-time on tropical data. He does a cracking job. He's an independent consultant, but he works full time with us, and he helps all the partners, whether it's a Sightsavers funded program or not in Ethiopia. He sits down and helps them, and all the things that Cristina said about building the plan, talking about the sampling criteria, making sure the work plan looks good, helping them execute it, and then helping them analyse the results at the end. And then this was Dirk Ingalls, who used to head up the NTD department in Geneva and WHO, and he says, and a landmark in the history of public health. So we think the programmes are bigger than just delivering surveys, because they're setting standards about what's acceptable, what's not acceptable for quality. We know, yes, everybody gets excited about shiny phones and collecting data, but it's crap in, crap out. So if the data is not good, if there aren't processes to make that sure that's working, it won't work. It won't work. Or challenges and learnings. Now, Cristina talked about data ownership and transparency. For me, my feedback to everybody here, and it's on the call, is this is the most sensitive and challenging of everything. It's about collecting data. Where do you hold it? Whose data is it? Obviously, it's the country's data, but you're taking the data out of the country. It's been held in the cloud. Where's the cloud? So we go through all these things, and it sounds like logically you could answer this, but it's not a logical challenge. It's an emotional challenge. Lots of the countries have had information published through academic institutions that they didn't know they'd signed up to do, or maybe they didn't sign up to do, and it conflicts with information that they're publishing off on another side. So it's so sensitive. We chose the organisation ITI that works for Pfizer because they're only involved in trachoma. They don't do implementation. They're not an academic institution. So we thought they were as neutral an organisation as we could find. We created contracts with them to say they couldn't share the data. So even if the ministry says, Sightsavers, you can have this data, ITI will send it to the countries, and then the country will send out data. ITI will not send information out. We've had formal research calls that Elena led, but there was a whole process about getting country input and getting country approval to use the data for the research programs. But it's one of these things that you can dip in and out of it for a little pilot, but as soon as you try to use it big scale, this is the thing that stops it. Kind of related a bit, data management. 30 to 40 million items of data comes through the system for tropical data every year. That's like 120,000 data items per day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So it's not something you pick up and put down. If you've got a day job and you think you're doing this on the side, well, yes, you can, but it won't work. The stuff comes in, it has to be analysed. Issues have to get back on the field because the guys are not going to stay around for kind of months and months and months in the same place. So you have to get back. So the success of it depends on quick analysis, quick feedback into the field, quick resolution of the problems, and move on. So for me, data management is it's a transactional thing. It's not research, it's not anything else, it's transactional. Data comes in, needs to be processed. We get better and better at it, obviously. When we started all this, we did it all manually and threw people around it. Of course, now we've got many automated algorithms that are just run to kind of push things out. So we can get the answers pretty quickly. Flexibility of resources, I think flexibility is key, because as we all know, trying to get countries to work to a plan that starts on a date, and we're dealing directly mainly with the ministries of health and things, so I would say a sequential plan is almost impossible. All the activities run in parallel, and yes, everybody will go. We'll have a start date and it'll happen, but we need to be flexible and respond, and have all sorts of resources, so we kind of stockpile things like loops and things, so we know when it all goes wrong we can ship things out to the countries. Training's our key thing, so this is where our quality is. So we think this is the most important thing, and that's why we spend a lot of time on it. Cristina mentioned about training. We've got two real things about training. One is the in-country training, so that's obviously key. But twice a year we put together, we'll have a francophone and an anglophone training, which gets all the trainers together to update them with anything that's happening globally. Just have a look, see if everything's okay, and obviously encourage them to work together, so we can grow the programme. I kind of started with partnership and collaboration. We couldn't do this without not just the partners on tropical data, but the other NGOs that are all in the LUSA partnership. So it's kind of, yet again, it's dozens and dozens and dozens of organisations that are all involved. Standardisation worked for us, and it worked for us so much in our DFID SAFE programmes and the trust programmes, and now Ascend and Accelerate. We're moving standardisation through to as many of the interventions as we can, and we think we've saved a lot of money on that, because we're doing it the same way. We can compare and contrast, and it's obvious where interventions are costing more than they should, and there's no obvious quality improvement. So for us, just for trachoma, these two programmes have transformed where trachoma is as a programme and as a community. It's the common language we use. So in a lot of countries, they will talk about GTB and tropical data. They won't talk about surveys, prevalence surveys. They'll talk about this is the name now adopted for surveys in their countries. For the global community, everybody recognises the quality, and everybody uses that information without challenge. The scale just gets bigger and bigger. And as trachoma is ramping up towards elimination, impact and surveillance surveys are coming at us like a train. Trains of them are just coming at us head on. So it's kind of, at some point, at the moment we're looking at where's the peak and how do we manage that peak, because it's not for the next 5 years. There'll definitely be in 18 months where all the programmes in the world will be doing some form of survey. And then it grows and expands. Cristina alluded to it. Yes, this is all about trachoma, but we've already built it into our OEM, our Onco Elimination Mapping Programme that Bill and Melinda Gates fund for us. So we're taking all the principles and we're trying to replicate that for Onco, and we've got plans, and we have worked with other WHO regions, PAHO, etc., to look at how do we expand what we do for tropical data into schisto SDH and also into LF. So over the next 2-3 years, with all our programmes, we'll be trying, how do we build tropical data, build something new. It won't be called tropical data, it'll be something else, but effectively take the principles of it about good quality data and working with the countries. So I think that's it. I think that's us. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. That was awesome. We've got about 5 minutes left if there are any questions. Also, guys, if you have any online, if you'd like to type them to me, I can ask them as well. So just raise your hand.
You had 2 questions, but one you sort of answered about other diseases. And But obviously, even in trachoma, this is all the survey data, but there's other type of data, particularly, the coverage with FDA. And I think it becomes interesting, particularly in the impact surveys, if you find something that you don't expect, then you need to explain it somehow, which the survey data on its own is not particularly useful. So my question is how easy that survey platform speaks to other platforms that hold, say, number of trichosis surgeries done or coverage reported in NTD, just to explain this.
If you could just repeat the question a little bit, if you can.
Okay. The question is really, there's lots of other information that's collected through trichosis surgeries, through coverage surveys. How does all that data come together so it can be compared and used? There is for trachoma, there is a WHO database, and what happens is all the tropical data information goes in, so all the survey information that we help collect goes in. The countries submit every year their own forms straight into this WHO database, so coverage, surgeries, all that information is collected and reported. That's just once a year, but ITI collect that through, because it's MDA, it's Pfizer, they need to know, and then when we have the trachoma expert committee meetings, that all physically comes together then, so we'll see all the results of the surveys, we'll see all the distributions that happened, we'll see the coverage rates of the distributions, and that twice a year, that review is where it's all qualitatively pulled together and looked at. And I think I said before when these committees were all focused on data, that's exactly the type of issues now. They're looking at the different types of data. Is it conflicting? Is it telling us something? Or is there things in other countries that border it that we should be looking at? So, really good question. Thanks, Lena.
Anything else? Great. Oh, we've just had one online. So this is Sunday. He said, what's the future of tropical data apart from onco-elimination mapping? Are you thinking of expanding this to cover TAS and impact assessments for other preventative chemotherapy, NTDs, lymphatic filariasis, schistosomiasis, and snail-transmitted helminth?
Thank you. Quite an easy question. Thanks, Sunday. The answer is yes. We have funding both in our Ascend programme and in our Accelerate programme, and objectives within these programmes to work on that. We're working alongside ESPN with that as well. So we've already started that process, but as usual, Sunday, it's all under the radar and it doesn't exist in any formal thing. But yes, it's already happening, and we're soon going to try and formalise that.
Yeah, just a quick question. There's quite a lot of data throughput and transfer. I'm just wondering what kind of infrastructure costs that. Is that something is that a challenge?
Well, no. No, because the question was about all the infrastructure costs and how it comes through. So some of it is the cobbled together beg, steal and borrow funding from different programmes, but ITI, or International Trachoma Initiative in Atlanta, are the kind of stewards of the data, and that's where the data management team is housed. So it's like 2.5 people work on, not 2 people and half a person supported work on there full time on the data. They fund, that's their contribution, is they fund the infrastructure because they already have a big infrastructure. They do other large data projects. So we kind of, it's one of these things, if you pull it all together and add it up, you might shock everybody and it's the wrong answer. So at the moment, it's kind of donated in kind. They donate the systems, the support, and the IT on the data management team as well. That's their contribution.
Oh, just had one from Bex, who firstly says thanks for the presentation. And then she's just said, what and how are the plans for collaboration with ESPN Collect going?
Okay, thanks, Bex. ESPN Collect is the vision is ESPN Collect will become a similar tool for tropical data for all the other diseases. At the moment, onco-elimination mapping is the nearest to moving in there, because of course Sightsavers are developing it. the whole work we've got in accelerating DFID safe is to say how can we expand tropical data or OEM into covering all the other diseases with ESPN. So ultimately, Bex, probably everything will go into ESPN Collect, but that's not tomorrow. That's maybe a few years, couple of years down the line. So the answer is yes, but not now, because ESPN Collect really only has OEM as a flagship.
Great, and it's now 1 o'clock, so that's a wrap. Thanks everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cristina. Well done.